It's all right. You go on ahead. I'm not gonna die on you, leave you in a cold, cruel, Carlosless world.
Okay.
So, the Resident Evil 3 remake has been out for a couple of months now. Consensus seems to be that it's a bit on the underwhelming side. Not a bad game by any stretch of the imagination, sitting at a comfortable, mostly positive rating by Steam reviews, at present at least, both recent and lifetime. But fan reception has been a little lukewarm. Possibly, probably, because it came so quick on the heels of last year's Remake 2. Which is really interesting to me, actually. When I were a lad, a year was an excruciatingly long time to wait for a sequel. Maybe it's just a sign of the times. With the video game industry being so inordinately large now, there's always another game on the horizon. Even before factoring in the multiple games released all at once. So there's plenty to keep us going until we get our next fix, because, well, there already is a next fix. But that's a story for another time. Today, I want to show off my full contrarian cred by being the only person in existence who has a firmly positive opinion to add. Okay, well, I'm not the only one, but you get what I mean. I'm not going to be throwing in any it's good buts like most other people. I genuinely, thoroughly enjoyed the game from start to finish. In fact, I absolutely love it. One of the very best in the series. Though it's worth noting that Zero and Code Veronica, in that order, are my first and second, so make of that what you will. So about that whole being rushed out the door thing, let's get that out of the way first. It's a pretty weak argument, really. Sure, some people do genuinely believe that, citing it as the reason the game is so short. It's not, but more on that later, because of the smaller timescale. But there are some reports that it was actually planned that they do Resident Evil 2 and 3 Remake as a package, meaning that Remake 3 was at least well underway by the time Remake 2 hit store shelves, and I can't help but wonder if delaying it was the right choice. Personally, I think Capcom were initially aiming for a 2020 release, but excitement for Remake 2 was so high they rushed that out of the door. If we'd gotten both games at the same time, the complaint of being too short wouldn't have been made for either. Having said that, the anticipation for Remake 2 was so high, an extra year of stew time would likely have set it up for failure. And I suspect we'd still be in the same position of, it's a good game, but for the whole thing. I mean, I even said as much about Remake 2 anyway, in my review on Pixel Judge. Yeah, I wasn't madly in love with it, despite its merits. There were several things about it that just rubbed me the wrong way. Most people, in fact. Which makes this situation all the more baffling, because pretty much all of those complaints have been fixed in Remake 3. Zombies are still tough, and somewhat randomized in how much punishment they can take. They'll fall over and appear to have been defeated, only to get back up and have another go later, unless you take the time to ensure you finish them off completely. The knife is no longer a perishable item, and its damage has been reduced, maybe a little too much, to make it more balanced. Boss fights are more clearly designed to make it far more obvious what exactly you need to do, typically taking place in larger areas that give you ample room for mobility, without being so open you can just run away forever. Our boy Nemesis isn't constantly wandering around and turning up whenever he bloody well feels like it, blatantly teleporting into your path to enhance the feeling of tension. And now those were all the best parts of the previous game?
Though pleasing some people.
Let's be honest here. This isn't the first time we've seen fans complain about little things they didn't like, only to then complain that they hated their removal in a follow-up. The same thing happened with several of the Final Fantasy games, in a row, back during the 5th console generation. There is no clearer indication that developers should, pretty much, just stop listening to their fanbase altogether. Controversial hot take. Rather, just focus on making the best version of the game they can. I mean, it's obviously not that simple. And responding to feedback can just as often, if not more so, lead to a greatly improved experience. But it's a fine balancing act. One that Capcom have actually executed pretty darn well this time around. mostly positive is still mostly positive after all. And even though there are a number of good game, just not a good Resident Evil, the real takeaway should still be that it's a good game. Nay, 'tis a great game, I tell you. A great game. Through and through. It just takes a little while for its full promise to shine. And no, don't worry, I'm not going to bust them away down the road of, you're just playing it wrong because... Well, there's some truth in that a lot of the time. But that doesn't really apply in this case. Whilst it is true that, yes, you should engage with the game, any game, the way it is intended to be played to get the most out of it, there are plenty of examples of games that are actually improved by your efforts to break the systems, emergent gameplay as they call it. And there are a few opportunities for that sort of thing, like Nemesis leaping over your head to ground pound enemies for you, but that's not what we're here to look at today. Something I have seen many people lament is the lack of extra game modes. No, I agree, Resistance doesn't count, even if I do rather like it myself. Valerie is best girl. But this is patently untrue. Just finish the game once and it overtly tells you new game mode unlocked. I mean, come on! Okay, you can argue it's not a true game mode in the sense of things like the Mercenaries mode from the original game, but they most certainly are still present, and they mix up the experience a lot more than you might think. More on that shortly. But you have to take the time to bimble through them, or be told, before you can really appreciate that. Whilst we're on the subject of Mercenaries mode, what's the big deal with all that anyway? It lets you unlock new weapons and the like, okay. Remake 3 does that too. It even allows you to use them whilst unlocking new stuff, even going so far as to instantly add them to item boxes mid-game if you drop out to grab something as soon as you can afford it. So what's the real difference? Is it really so much worse playing through the same game a half dozen times as opposed to playing through the same game half a dozen times? A genuine question. I want to know if that genuinely is what people think. I'm not just trying to dismiss it. Is it really that different? Mercenaries is pretty short, allowing you to make some progress in only a few minutes. Like, literally a few minutes. So, I can certainly see how that would be preferable in some ways. You can jump in intermittently to mix things up a little, rather than having to muddy your way through an entire campaign. But, well, as previously mentioned, you don't have to finish the campaign to get your shiny new shiz. And I thought we were all in agreement that it's too short anyway. So I am legitimately confused about what precisely the issue is. It seems that people are arguing both things at the same time. It's too long, but too short, with not enough content. These complaints are all valid, don't get me wrong. It may seem like I'm just dismissing everything. You might even feel like I'm being flippant. But these are genuine queries. Are the reasons, or others, I've mentioned previously actually that big of a deal for you? Because to be frank, it doesn't really feel that way. Not to me. And even if they are, I'd argue they're not significant, even taken all together. Not significant enough to deride the game as much as it has been. Ultimately, however, if you dislike Remake 3, or any game, or anything for that matter, then that's reason enough. I will continue, firmly, to deny that the quality of any piece of art can be measured objectively. But I completely agree that one can form an objective opinion. If you do or do not like something, then that is objectively true of your opinion. As far as you are concerned, that thing will be objectively good or bad. It all comes down to personal preference. However, that does not mean that any piece of art objectively is good or bad universally. So if you don't like Remake 3, and any or all of the mentioned complaints are your reason for coming to that conclusion, fine. I'm not going to take that away from you. And I'm honestly not trying to change your mind either, assuming anyone even pays attention to this video. What I am going to do, though, is put forward my own case and address some things which I think, factually, are incorrect. The first is regarding length. An average playthrough will take you around 4 hours. Longer your first time. depending on your chosen difficulty and whether you fully scour the environment for every pickup, like I do. But that's true of most Resident Evil games. The vast majority of them clock in at a few hours apiece, 2 to 3, sometimes 4, few exceptions. The series has long played the card of longevity through replay value. Many of them also do not have extra game modes to unlock, at least not entirely separate modes like Mercenaries. So I suspect the main complaint regarding its absence here is that it was present in the original, but it really didn't do all that much either. So I genuinely prefer progression and item unlocks being tied back into the main game, as they have been previously, even in the much applauded Remake 2. As far as the game modes that do exist, I suspect that many who've written the game off have not even taken the time to properly explore them, both of them, because if you had, I strongly believe your final verdict would be rather different. The first key difference is item placement. They really mix things up a fair bit here. For example, the Lightning Hawk is now sat waiting for you next to the very first item box you come to. And that's just the first thing that's changed. It doesn't make things that much different, but it does enable new strategies for progress very early on, especially if you couple them with unlocked items. The Lightning Hawk's a very powerful weapon, and being given it right at the beginning of the game, even with its limited ammunition, does give you a certain advantage that you wouldn't otherwise have. More notable changes come in the form of enemy behaviour though. Everything has seen an increase in damage resistance, which has a marginal impact. They're not that much beefier, at least on Nightmare mode. But you can definitely feel the difference when something takes even a single bullet more than it used to. If you opt for a true experience without using any store items, resources are massively more limited because of this change alone. But it doesn't stop there. Tougher enemies are introduced sooner, and even new variants are added in at key points. Fucking pale heads with glowing tentacle vagina helmets? Are you fucking kidding me? I punched myself in the balls the first time I saw them, barely managing to scrape through the RPD without running out of ammo. I had about 15 assault rifle rounds left. Even playing through again knowing they were coming with infinite ammo weapons at the ready, they wrecked my shit. That was damn tense, let me tell you. And that was even with me using a health regen, damage, and defense coin. No way in hell am I trying that without at least something from the store anytime soon. The biggest difference is in the way enemies, especially the rank and file zombies, behave. We're all familiar with them lunging forward to grab Jill, or Claire, or Leon, or whoever. But did you know they will full on sprint now? Not just a quick shamble, but proactively rush you down for a good old tasty-facey munch-munch. This dickhead fucked me over so many damn times until I really got to grips with the dodge mechanic. It's actually a shame this wasn't put into easier game modes as well, because I know some people flat out forgot about it altogether, the dodge, including myself. But I can also appreciate Capcom's decision to lock it behind New Game Plus. Replay incentive, you know?
But I'm not done yet!
But oh boy, if that isn't enough for you, just look at the main man, the big boy himself, our very own Bimba Gimp. Look at that motherfucking move! Now that genuinely caught me off guard. He doesn't move like that until Inferno mode, and boy oh boy does it make a difference. It's also worth noting that even with damage coins, he doesn't go down from a single grenade anymore, not on Inferno. Though the fact that he does take a knee from a grenade in any mode is a bit of a disappointment. And I do actually think he should have been able to charge after you on everything other than easy, if only for a few seconds, like a stamina bar or something. It would have added some extra tension to the chase sequences. But even that isn't the end of it. Nemesis' final form becomes hella aggressive in both Nightmare and Inferno. His attacks are faster, last for longer, and he has a hell of a lot more weak spot testicles. If you don't learn to really master the dodge by then, you ain't going nowhere. He will grind you into paste and snort the puddle just for some extra humiliation. I was stuck on him for so damn long. I actually dropped out to buy more coins and he still gave me a twatting. When I finally put him down, damn, that felt good. You need to try this, guys. Seriously, you need to try this. And when you deal that final blow on Inferno, you'll feel like
a goddamn sexual tyrannosaurus, just like me.
Now, speaking of Nemesis, another complaint I've seen is that his appearances feel more staged, more of a set piece than a dynamic event. And whilst this is true, it also means he doesn't come teleporting into your face when you blatantly just heard him in the other direction. You also don't hear him clomping around as an advance warning when he is about to jump out at you. He just literally jumps out in front of you. Remember, the areas he chases you through are typically fairly large and interconnected, so there's still an element of unpredictability, whilst taking out the irritation of him popping up out of nowhere whenever he bloody well feels like it. Because that's the thing, that's what we pretty much agree is the end result of random enemies. At first it can be genuinely tense, not knowing when or how they're going to occur. But after a while, all of that tension is revealed for what it really is. It's a veneer, a fleeting moment of uh-oh, before it becomes highly tedious. That's why RPGs so commonly have a no encounter ability thrown in there. Sometimes you just want to get on with it and do your stuff without having to look over your shoulder all the time. More scripted than the original game, you say? Well, yeah, okay, I'll grant you that, but not much. Not really. He may pop up more often in the original, but only in a few set places, and mostly dependent on what you've already done. Meanwhile, Remake 3's method has him pop up at set times, but makes the chase last longer. He goes to different areas, he'll follow you from one section to another, which can lead to some pretty hectic set pieces. Admittedly less so once you know where he's going to arrive, but that's where Inferno mode comes back into it. He's going to bust out of this wall? I'll just throw a grenade. Shit, that didn't work. I'll just run away. Holy fuck, he's bungee jumping straight on my balls! Replay value. And that's pretty much all I have to say, except for one last thing. Just to make everyone who's already rushed to the comments section look like an impatient plum. The branching paths. That's the largest complaint people have levied, that the choices from the original game aren't here this time. And yeah, I won't argue with that one. I just don't think they're that big of a deal personally. If you do, again, not going to argue with you. I did like them, and I fully agree that the game would have been better with their inclusion. I simply don't think it was ruined by their absence. There's something I like to say. A little analogy, if you will allow me. 9 million quid isn't as good as 10 million quid, but I wouldn't be disappointed if I only had 9 million. You know what I mean? Oh yeah, and the clock tower is in the bloody game. It's just not an explorable area, and that's fine. That part sucked anyway. It just dragged on if you ask me. Trimming it down to the boss fight? Oh, hot damn. Hot damn. That's legitimately one of my favourite boss fights ever. And I usually hate boss fights on point of principle. So, in closing, Remake 3 is a great game. Resident Evil or otherwise. But more importantly, it's also a great remake. It took the core of what Resident Evil 3 was, reshaped it, and took out all the fluff, giving us a far more focused and polished reimagining, whilst staying true to what really mattered about its forebear. The unstoppable killing machine hounding you with relentless urgency. Carlos' new hair, oh boy. But hey, if you don't like it, that's absolutely fine. If you still disagree after everything I've said, that's fine too. Whatever your reason, or reasons, be they mentioned here or known only to you, your opinion will always remain precisely that. If you've already gone through Nightmare and Inferno and still found the game lacking, that's great too. But if you haven't, I think you should. It might just make you reconsider. If you found anything I said here interesting and would like to support me doing this again in the future, because I do hope to, I have a Patreon. Please leave a like and comment, all the usual stuff. I don't like saying all this stuff, but this time I'm actually going to, because there's quite a lot of effort put into this one, and I'm quite proud of what I've achieved here. So until next time, thank you for watching.